Hello, my name is Maiten. I'm a science educator and I'm going to tell you what we mean about inquiry-based science education here in Norway. First, I'm going to ask our leader of the Norwegian Center for Science Education, Doris Jorda. Hi Doris.
Hey!
What is inquiry-based science teaching?
It's a good question, and it's a difficult question because inquiry-based science teaching has become so many things to so many different people in so many different countries. But I think the best thing you can say about inquiry-based science teaching is that it's good science teaching. So if you walk into a classroom and you see that teachers are not directing everything, that kids are engaged, that kids are wondering about things and acting like little scientists, then you can say, well, that's an inquiry classroom. So if you start to break it down and you start to say, okay, in an inquiry classroom, what is the teacher doing? What is the teacher thinking about? The teacher is thinking that, wow, I've got some objectives. I've got some learning objectives for today. And at the end of the day, I'm hoping that the kids will learn something. But it's not for me to stand up here and tell them what they're going to learn. My job is to say, hey, you guys, we're going to talk about magnets today, or we're going to talk about the weather, or whatever. And then the teacher says, do you wonder about any of those things? Is there anything there that you're curious about? So you get kids to start thinking and to be motivated to start thinking their own thoughts. Because those little kids that are sitting there, or even big kids, they're coming into that classroom with their own experiences. They've observed weather. They've observed magnets. So what does that mean? They need to talk about it. And they need to say to each other and with each other, okay, this is what we know, but this is what we wonder about. And as you get those questions coming up about what kids wonder about, then it's the teacher's job again to come in and say, okay, now we've got this great set of questions of things we wonder about. What should we do with it? Is there anything we can do with it? And then we say, well, we can be like scientists. Scientists wonder about things all the time. They're describing the world. We can describe the world too. What do we wonder about with the weather? What do we wonder about with a magnet? And then we can set up some questions. We can start doing some observations, maybe even some experiments. Maybe we can go look at the internet to find out what other people say. Maybe we can read books about what's been said about magnets or about the weather. And then we can say, have we been able to answer any of the questions we wonder about? And if we haven't, well, we got to maybe ask some new questions. Or maybe we've got to do some new experiments. But it's just continuous wondering about things. And then at the end of the day, the teacher's role. What have we actually learned? Because it's not just the constant wondering all the time for kids. We've got to land those learning objectives at some point and say, okay, what have we found out about magnets? We can introduce language. We can start to talk about force. What is a force? We can get kids to start using that in their experimental work. So this language thing, that's a big job for teachers in an inquiry classroom. To make sure that when the kids are doing all their stuff, that they're using the proper language for science. So it's all kind of woven together. When you walk into a classroom and you see all that going on, you know there's a science classroom where inquiry is happening.
Now I'm going to ask another person. It's Mattis, who is a science teacher in a Norwegian school. Hi Mattis.
Hello.
Now I'm going to ask you, you're a science teacher, and what do you think about when I say inquiry-based science teaching?
I try to think and meet the learners. When you meet a learner, the learners are creative, they are curious, they want to understand the world they're living in. Inquiry-based teaching or inquiry-based education, I think, will meet the learner's urge to understand and to develop their understanding about the world they're living in. And when you can meet the curiosity, then you can develop a common ground for more exploration, more understanding, broader creativity. I think that's kind of sums it up.
We heard about Mattis, the science teacher, and Doris, the leader of the Norwegian Center for Science Education, about what inquiry-based science teaching education is in Norway. And I work a lot with teachers, and here in Norway we have decided to introduce them to the 5E model. And the 5E model is a concrete way to think about inquiry-based science teaching. We have translated it and implemented it into our Norwegian context, but the phases are the same from the English model. They are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And shortly, it's about the engagement phase, what both Mattis and Doris talked about, how to engage the students, stimulate their curiosity, but also to elicit their prior knowledge. In the explore phase, it's about gathering data, for example, doing field work, do an experiment, but also to collect data from the internet or using books or talking to other people, including the teacher. Then we have the explanation phase, and here it's about using scientific language rather than everyday language, using concepts and explaining things, just like Doris were talking about, for example, magnetisms. In the elaboration phase, we think about how students can use their knowledge from what they have learned about a phenomena or an issue in one context and apply it into a broader context. Mattis said something about how students can make their knowledge about something to apply it to knowledge about the world they're living in. In the middle here, there is the evaluation phase. And evaluation is a part of all phases. It's more formative assessment, like thinking about what do we know, what do we want to know, and what questions can we explore, trying to find out. So, using this one with teachers, we in Norway help teachers to plan their teaching, but also to evaluate it and reflect upon what they're doing when they're engaging students in inquiry-based science teaching.